While most MSPs are out there hunting endlessly for new clients, the smart ones know their richest opportunities lie in the fields they already own. My name's James Steele and this is Harvest, where MSPs and industry experts share proven ways to grow profitable revenue from your current customer base. No theory, no fluff, just field-tested strategies that work. Let's grow.
You haven't got your system structured enough to understand that you're not delivering antivirus. On the service desk, we get 20 calls a month for antivirus problems,
Right.
and we fix them all. If your target market, for instance, is people that are bending metal in a garage and they've got 5 PCs in the office and it's full of oil, they're probably not going to lend themselves very well to having an all-you-can-eat package because they don't want half of it. If we did purchase something, the CEO was very structured on what's the delivery, and you deliver 90% of that before we move on to anything else. And if it's not 90%, we have to make it 90% or we get rid of the tool. Everyone talks about different theories in sales and marketing, different ways of doing it, different tools, different marketing methods, etc.
Okay.
But the crux of it is they do zero of it. So stop talking about which ones you should choose and just do something. Most project teams in MSP will be making no money. They'll be losing money if anything. And the business will be looking at it from an angle of, this is a necessary evil.
Sometimes I think I spoil you people. Every week I'm bringing you these A-class guests. I'm even on site this week. Maybe you could drop me a little review. This is a fledgling podcast and it really helps. Or even just drop me a note on LinkedIn and let me know that you're listening. This week is no different. I've got another top-class guest, Darren Strong from Scalable MSP. He's built his previous MSP to 7 million revenue with 20% EBITDA, so proper numbers, not just vanity metrics. And he's worked in his time with around, over 3,000 MSPs through ConnectWise Evolve's program. So he's seen everything, all the operational messes you can imagine. And the idea of today really is just to cut through all that nonsense and focus on what is actually some pretty boring fundamentals, but the ones that make you money. So we're talking service catalogs, clean data, systematic processes. None of those get rich quick AI tools or guru frameworks. Here we're just talking about getting your hands dirty, getting your pen out and writing notes in your notepad for stuff you're going to put your spin on and implement in your own business with your take on it, of course. I really hope you enjoy this one. It was a brilliant chat. Let's dive in. So a very special episode of Harvest today. I've come to visit the team at Scalable and I'm here with Darren Strong, CEO of the company. Darren, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it's great. Great to see the operation in person. You've experienced some pretty significant growth over recent times and I'm sure a lot of that is down to obviously the brilliant service you're providing and so on. But there's definitely some market factors that are probably driving that as well, I would say. So I'm kind of interested to hear from you your take on where the demand is, particularly around the sort of the growth services that you offer, and kind of what's driving that interest in what you can do for MSPs.
Yeah, I think lots of MSPs now are getting to that world where they know they need to do better with systems. So the systems is becoming more of their focus. So where before it's, I'm going to buy a shiny toy, I'm going to try and implement it, and then I'm going to move on. People are now getting very tired of that. They're spending lots of hours trying to make the business better. It's not going anywhere. They're spending 60 hours a week. They're promising something to their family that's going to get built, and it's not getting anywhere. So they're now refocusing themselves and saying, actually, let's build a system here. Let's build a model that works, then we can build on top of that. So the niche in the market that I saw from a consulting point of view was having consultants that have got that experience themselves. So not having it where you're just teaching someone a framework, but as soon as you get asked a question outside of that framework, you sort of just go, I don't know. I haven't turned to page 20 yet to give you that answer. That used to always annoy me and frustrate me when I was on the opposite side of that receiving. And then also having frameworks that are built to the size of the MSP, not to the request of the MSP. Everyone thinks that they're unique when they're not. It's more about what's the size you are and where do you want to go in your journey.
That's interesting. People are going to be shuddering now listening to that. Like, absolutely not. I have a unique identity and I'm completely different to my colleague down the road, but actually you see some pretty major similarities amongst companies.
Yeah, and that was all in my journey. So my big part of my journey was the peer groups. So Evolve peer group run by ConnectWise was a massive part of my journey. And what you see, especially when I was on the flip side of that, when I was facilitating those groups, is someone would come in, so unique, we are 3 sites globally, how we do things is blah, blah, blah. And then within the first hour, they're sat there thinking, yeah, we're not unique at all. We've all got the same problems in the room. We've all got the same things going on. We're all trying to deliver a service technical world that doesn't need to be technical. Forget the fact that we do IT. We're reselling service and labour as a service, and we're all the same, and we've all got the same problems. We all started this world, I'd say 90% of the MSP owners, because they are technical, they get told that they're good at tech.
Yes.
You should do it yourself. You seem to be able to fix these PCs very well, and you can talk about it. And then very suddenly they realise that they're in a world where they touch no tech. They've got to understand finance, sales and marketing, building teams, nurturing teams, building something that they can build as an asset, and they spend no time at all doing the thing that they actually love doing, which is the tech.
Yes.
And in the peer groups, they learn that actually there's a journey for themselves, and the biggest thing that is the same is they are the blocker to the business, and they need to start opening up to the community, opening up to that knowledge, and actually training themselves how they should be the CEO of that business. And then they stop being the blocker and the business starts to grow. If you've got a technical CEO, I can guarantee when he analyses his time, he probably spends 60 to 80% of his time in the technical department. But he doesn't spend any time in sales and finance.
And that trend is something that's only going to become more potent, isn't it? In terms of the technology is perhaps less relevant and there's less configuration to be done, and it's more about analysing the business requirements of a company rather than technical needs.
And people talk about this, like, what's the future of an MSP? And it's already started. We see all the data analytics from a typical service desk. It's not about incidents now. It's not about there's a fault that we need to fix. It's not an Exchange server database that needs defragging because it's gone offline. That's now Microsoft's problem or Google's problem. It's more about what service are you delivering, what's the white glove experience, what's the strategy and the nurturing of that business, almost becoming a business advisor, not a technical fix. So us now becoming the same is becoming a very big problem. You look at most MSP websites, they look exactly the same with some different colours.
Yes,
So
for sure.
how do you stand out when we're actually all delivering 365 services and VoIP services just like the guy next door?
Well, let me ask you then. So we've only got, say, 25 minutes together, and what I need you to do is basically condense down all of your days, weeks, months, years of knowledge and what you provide as a service. So we'll call it 10 and we'll be out of it.
We've got a stamp.
So in the context of how MSPs watching this, but perhaps can relate to this, technical owners that maybe need to be more focused on the business, the advice that we can give them around growing their existing customer base. If I came to you and I feel like I've hit a bit of a ceiling, run me through the steps that would be the first sort of journey you would take, the first things you would look for as kind of, what's going wrong in this business? Where can I help most to move the needle?
So I would say the number one asset that we deliver is a service catalogue and a product catalogue. Typically, the MSP has gone through some 20-year journey.
Yeah.
There's lots of Chinese whispers in between all of that, and no one really knows what they deliver or, more importantly, what they don't deliver. So they are over-delivering and they get their bump kicked when they do it wrong, even though it's something that they should never have done in the first place.
Okay.
And their project revenue is lower than average.
Talk to me about that then. So the things that they're doing that they shouldn't be doing, because things that we should look out for that we haven't charged for example.
Yeah, so customer comes along, you've sold them IT support, but let's say they're running their own antivirus. An antivirus was never in the deal, but you haven't got your system structured enough to understand that you're not delivering antivirus. On the service desk, we get 20 calls a month for antivirus problems, and we fix them all.
Yeah, okay.
Because the tech doesn't know why this is different to customer A and customer B, because in customer B, we deliver the antivirus.
Yeah.
Even more so when you think about it's the same antivirus, because they've nothing even to tell them that
there's just a billing link somewhere in the background that,
So you should have your service catalogue identified properly so we know how we sell it, what we sell, how we onboard that, how we support that, and how we invoice that. So it's very clear we do IT and AV for one customer and we don't for another. That's a very typical problem that we see in an MSP.
How do you do that? What's the process then? So how do you work through that? Do we refer to a blackboard? Is it a kind of like, do you sit down with them and say, right, what is it you want to do and what don't you want to do? How do those conversations go?
So the big part of that journey for us is facilitation. It's getting the key people in the right room and say, okay, let's talk about what we do today. Let's not talk about what the contract says. Let's not talk about what we want to do next year, but actually what do we do today? And then let's try and put some guide ropes around that to say, what things do we want to rein back? Because some of your customers have seen this service for 10 years. If tomorrow you then go, no, what's the effect of that? So you might not want to say no, you might want to carry on, but know that you're doing that.
But exactly. So is that a case of just making sure that you've got eyes on that? So it's in the PSA or whatever it might be?
Yeah, so you structure that in documentation and then you structure it in the PSA. Okay. So for instance, a tech launching a ticket, when he went to the contract world in the PSA, in the ticket, he would see 6 services. And if antivirus isn't there, then he doesn't support antivirus.
Okay, so you always see that.
It becomes very clear then what they're doing and not doing. Mm-hmm. And another key one is data. You know, most people will come to us saying we want some sort of journey. Commonly, it's over growth. And for some weird reason, everybody wants 5 million revenue. Not really sure why 5 million.
It's just the next big number, isn't it?
It's always, in the peer groups, it was always 5 million.
Yeah.
But no one's actually worked out what the data says today because they haven't got those data points. They don't know really where they are on revenue and profitization and resource demand and where they're actually going with their client base, what the cross-selling looks like and white space analysis. So they don't really know where I can make this 5 million or even if it's supposed to be 5 million because they've not even worked out what that actually means.
It's a completely hypothetical, not linked to anything number, isn't it?
Yeah.
At that stage,
so when you say, okay, I want to be 5 million in 5 years, you say, okay, what's 12 months look like? Well, I think I want to be 3 million. Right, well, how are you going to get that extra 500 grand? Well, we're just going to sell more.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what is more and of what and by what method?
That's the danger, isn't it? I'll just knuckle down.
Yeah. And what I learned in my journey is you can do 60 hours a week and feel as though you're adding lots of value to the business and actually you're adding nothing. Because are you working on the right things at the right time and delivering the right things for the future? You can be a busy 60-hour fool and just go home tired every day.
That's really key, isn't it? It's hard not to chuckle at this one, isn't it? Everyone wants that magic 5 million, but can't actually explain where that revenue is going to come from. We'll just sell more. Great strategy, that. Try this instead. Take your current MRR, multiply that by your average customer lifespan. That gives you some kind of baseline. Or do it how you need to, but make sure there's some numbers behind it. You can identify 3 services your top 10 customers don't have yet. Then you've got something resembling a growth roadmap, not just a kind of a well, this is what I heard in the peer group, so it should be fine. So going back to this productization or the sort of the portfolio organization then. So first thing is kind of get a list of, what it is you should be doing, what you want to be doing. Do you have any conversations there around how you should structure sort of, like add-ons or upsells or anything there in terms of how that should look in terms of, making sure you're getting the most revenue each time you make a sale?
Yeah, so it's all about what type of MSP do you want to run. So we come with what I've branded as a starter for 10. So we have a starter for 10 service catalog that would say a typical MSP has got these types of services that deliver these types of outcomes for this type of structure. And if you're an MSP that, for instance, wants to have one service and everyone buys everything or they buy nothing, you have one model. If you have another MSP that says, actually, I want it all bolted down so I can cherry pick and I can move it around and I can work to this type of world.
Does that matter in your experience? I'm interested about it because obviously everyone should have their own pricing models, right? But in terms of the granularity, I see that a lot as well.
Yeah.
Is there an impact on the sort of performance and bottom line of doing it one way or the other, or is it just a case of it's horses for courses?
I would say there's 2 big things. There's what's your target market? If your target market, for instance, is people that are bending metal in a garage and they've got 5 PCs in the office and it's full of oil, they're probably not going to lend themselves very well to having an all-you-can-eat package because they don't want half of it and you become too expensive to even get a seat at the table. If your target market is a financial institute and they're dealing with money management, for instance, and they've got 200 people and data integrity and their AIP and security is top of their mind, one package is going to fit perfectly. So I think it depends on what's the model you're looking at to verse your target audience.
Yeah.
And I think secondly, it's playing with the team you have or you change the team. So for instance, is your sales team and account managers more structured to doing bolt-ons and upsells over a period of time because they are relationship people that tend to get their foot in the door, they're not really heavy sales, They're not heavy in the way they do it, but they build a relationship and they start to add bolt-ons.
Okay.
So over a year's time, you get the same revenue, but you don't get it all on day one. Or are your salespeople very much about, I'm selling it all on day one and I don't want anything involved with it afterwards, and it goes to an account manager's team and that's where I'm at. So I think there's two things though, what's your target market, and then what's the people you have, or are you going to change those people? I worked with a customer just recently where they wanted to have an account manager's team that were technically focused, and they could design 80% of the quotes that they needed to do themselves without a technical input. But the whole of their team, apart from one person, had no technical skills. So are you going to sack 20 account managers and hire 20 new ones, or are you going to change your strategy? Because it's not going to work.
Yes.
Because you can't upsell.
That's optimistic, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't upsell 20 people into a technical knowledge within 3 months. It's just never going to happen.
Yeah.
But they're not thinking logically that way. They're just thinking, I like what he does. How can I rinse and repeat that? Well, you're talking about changing the whole team then. Which one do you want to do?
Yeah, that's so important, isn't it? Aligning it with the resources that you have and not just shooting for what perfect looks like.
It's something we're very focused on in Scalable, because where we started was how do we create mini Darrens? Not that the world needs more Wiganese people at all, with my accent.
Don't be so hard on yourself.
But how do we create more mini Darrens? Well, the problem with that is, how do you find consultants that have had a similar journey to I have? That's really hard to do. It's hard to find the consultants we have right now with the experience they have. You're tenfold in that to try and get people that know where I've come from. Not that that's better where they've come from, but if we build a framework that fits for me, then you need people that can deliver that.
Yes.
So what we've really turned to now is actually building a framework that we deliver with the football team that we have, with some slight upskills. So when they first come to us, they get upskilled in facilitator training and stuff like that, so they can manage a room, but the knowledge and the way that they've run MSPs is built into our framework.
Now, for me at least, this stuff around the people is actually some of the most enlightening parts of our conversation. You can't transform your entire team overnight. It's delusional, isn't it? Let's be honest. Map your current people's actual strengths, not what you wish they were, and then design your service delivery around those strengths. If you want technical sales, then you're going to have to hire technical people. If you want relationship builders, then you need to structure for add-on sales and overtime. Work with the reality is basically what Darren's saying. So square pegs don't fit into round holes. Doesn't matter how hard you push them, they ain't going in. This episode is sponsored by Sales Builder, where I work. I really wanted to tell you about us because I see so many MSP sales teams buried in admin, instead of talking to customers and building relationships. We help you automate your sales process with standardized product catalogs and professional proposals. Our service matrix, or the white space module, that's the bit that shows you visually where the opportunities are in your customer base, from service gaps to upcoming renewals. Everything links directly with your PSA and, of course, your distributors. If you'd like to free up your sales team's time and spot more revenue opportunities, simply connect with me on LinkedIn or head to salesbuilder.com. Let's get back to it. How do you analyse that?
When we're hiring them?
I'm thinking about the MSP. So when you go into a company and you're saying, right, okay, so team of 15, give us an idea, and it'll be like, oh yeah, John's fantastic, got really good sort of technical skills, and whatever. And we could be Marie's brilliant with people. Is there any sort of formal structure to that, or do you just kind of have a conversation about how it's going and sort of who's good at what, and then work on that basis?
So typically it starts first of all with a strategy. What actually is the owners of the businesses? What are their strategy? What's their exit game? What does it need to look like? What does the legacy need to look like? What do they want to leave behind? How does this business?
That's question number one.
Yeah. Then it's okay. Tell me about what you do it now. How do you do it now, and how does it work, and what pains do you get off the back of that? So typically one of our first things we do is do a PSA audit. And off the back of that audit that we deliver off our framework, I can typically tell you what your MSP looks like, the organizational structure, the people that stand out because you've sideswiped them, the data that doesn't look right, the services that you're making no money on.
How do you see that sort of stuff? I mean, I'm curious. So is it activity numbers? Is it that kind of,
activity numbers, averages across the team.
Right.
You've got somebody that's got some type of, been there a long time, but they've clearly been sideswiped because they couldn't do the role that they should have been doing, and now they're doing this role that doesn't really add any value.
You see all that from the PSA, do you?
Yeah, because we see what activities they're doing, we see what time they're adding, we see what services they're contributing to, what customers they're contributing to. And the way that we do the audit is, this is what we see, but is that what you see on the ground floor? Because it could be that you're putting it into a different system. It could be that you're putting it into no system, but it does happen.
I bet that's common, isn't it?
Yes. So what we want to know is, here's what we see. Tell us if there's a different world that we're not seeing. And now we're going to talk about the outcomes that you see from that, either good or bad.
Okay.
And then often there's lots of bad from that you want to do better. And then that's the framework that we deliver on. So we then organize the way that we deliver on the ease of putting it into your business and the impact that it's going to have. And that creates our priority list. Because there's always a million things that you can do in an MSP. There's always, I think MSP owners and SLT team are always the most critical on themselves. There's always 1,000 things in a list of things that they want to do better. The problem is, number one, often they're looking at outcomes and not the root problem, because often 10 of those things are actually linked to one thing that if you fix that, that would outcome those 10 things. And then often they're working on the wrong thing because it's the thing that they are more attuned to, they're more easy at doing. So for instance, if you've got a technical CEO, I can guarantee when he analyzes his time, he probably spends 60 to 80% of his time in the technical department. But he doesn't spend any time in sales and finance because that's where his natural tendency is and where he feels he adds value because he hasn't learned the other skills.
Which is completely understandable, isn't it? That is a lovely segue actually into the sort of the sales side of things. So if we think we've got a portfolio that we're happy with that suits the strengths of our team, what do we do in terms of how do we generate more revenue from our existing companies at that point? Obviously, it needs to be aligned with their needs as well. It's not just about pushing as many services as possible. Where do you go? What would you advise teams?
The MSPs that I see doing it very well are very, very focused on relationship and some type of strategic review that happens at a cadence with that customer, depending on the size or services they deliver to that customer. So I think most MSPs now talk about a quarter strategic business review or it's not
a QBR, it's a quarterly strategic business review.
Yeah, most people talk about that, but often we see there is no common framework, there is no process, there is no reoccurring item that would make sure it happens. They've had maybe kickback from their customers saying, yeah, this is okay, but we don't want to see you quarterly, when actually they're consuming a lot of services. What they're actually saying is, this meeting adds no value to me, so we'll have them yearly because I want to keep you happy and show that we're a partner, but actually you're not worth my time.
How would you switch that up if that's the feeling you're getting from the people you're meeting?
I would be more about, let's talk about your persona and what you want to see in this meeting. What's your role in this business and how does that interact with me on these meetings? So if you've got someone that is, an operations director that's very much into the numbers, he'll probably enjoy going through the service desk figures. If you've got a CEO that sits above him and you go through the service desk figures, he's probably going to suggest we meet every 12 months because that was no use to me at all. You're not talking to me about strategy or risk or governance or director risk that's in this business.
Do you flip that up each time? Would you say that's something that you'd sort of, each time you go, every 3 months or whatever it might be, once it would be sort of reviewing services and things, another time it would be more strategic, or do you just try and have a similar kind of structure every time you go in? What would you recommend people do in those sort of
Yeah, I would say you should have a similar type of structure, but you should definitely match the persona.
Right.
I am no salesperson myself. I'm more of a relationship person, but I'm definitely about what's the character I'm talking to, what's the role, how can I add value to that?
The more I do these, the more I realise that relationships is sales, is everything.
It's massive, yeah. Yeah, I'm not here to try and sell you something. I'm just going to walk through what's your world look like today and then give you some options of how that could look differently.
Yes.
And off the back of that, there might be something, or you might even take something away and deliver it yourself. That's absolutely fine. And so I think the strategic business review should be, again, it should be tailored on what's the type of services you want to deliver, how does the white glove type experience fit into that, who's the team you're playing with, and who's the audience, and probably the audience is first. But it's pointless me building a strategic business alignment, governance and risk meeting and then giving that to somebody that has none of those skills and wants to build a relationship,
Yes.
that meeting is not going to go very well in any world when someone delivers that in my team. So you've got to make sure that they're skilled and they're equipped to actually deliver that meeting. Because quite often what I see is you have actually got one chance in that strategic business review, especially with a brand new customer or the first time you start doing it. That first meeting is going to set the scale for the rest of the meeting.
Yeah, it'll decide whether it's going to be an annual thing from there on or whether you're actually going to be invited back more regularly.
Yeah, definitely.
So much of this is about the people, isn't it? From what you're saying. So in terms of the sort of the best performing MSPs you work with, then, so you've got a nice cadence there for the reviews. You know what products and services that you're offering. How do you align? How do you start to think about? I actually want to generate the most profit here now. In terms of how do I align my products and services with what my customers need and start to turn the needle on the revenue figure, the profitability figure. How do you go about that? Would you say?
Yeah, so it's having that service catalog defined.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you're doing, then how can you change it? You have that defined in the PSA. So then you're getting in the PSA. You've then got the revenue, any tooling costs, the biggest one, which is your labor costs, to give you the ultimate true profitability. So you have that set out for each service. So now we can look at service overarching across all my customers, and we can look at a customer for every service that they buy from us. That then tells us what levers we need to start to pull, whether it be the service isn't penetrating enough of our customers, so we need to change the service.
Would the account managers do that, or who would review that? Do you think in the sort of companies you've worked with? How does that look? I've got a QBR coming up in 2 weeks' time. Do I review the services, look at some service desk tickets? How do I sort of get that?
Yeah, so that's all about having the right dashboards for the right roles. So if you've got an account manager delivering X type of business review, you want to give them the right data. You might also have a sales manager above them or the CEO MD above them that's going to bring some of that data together as well. You've got service input. Some people would have just the service manager input into that, or some people have lead technical people aligned to certain customers. Depends on the size and the structure of the business.
Yeah.
But all that input comes in, and then you're looking at all those key things around how's this helping us and the customer, and making sure your services are aligned to them, making sure there's the right penetration, make sure the risk is identified, make sure there's a 12-month budget and a plan in place. And you also secretly, as a ninja, you're cleverly working out which services you want to sell, but also when you want to sell them.
Yeah, it's this ninja-y bit I'm interested in. It's that kind of, how do you align it? Because you don't want it, like I say, you're not just pushing product, but at the same time, you are looking for maximum penetration on all your products and services.
Yeah, but you also don't want to be selling services that don't match that customer.
Totally, yeah.
Because we all know there's a million MSPs out there that's going to be knocking on their door, and that'll be one of their first proving points is, are your services adding value? So you've got to make sure that's all right, but also you're also being a ninja on project delivery. So we don't want all of our customers buying everything in January because we don't have enough delivery resources to deliver it all in February. So we want to secretly scale it out over the year so we're flatlining the project revenue rather than having a massive peak that we can't deal with. So it's all the teams coming together and working out what's the best way to deliver the right solutions to the customers.
What do you think about standardising the projects that you can offer? Is that something you see quite a lot?
Massive, yeah.
Yeah.
So recently done some work with an MSP where that is exactly what they've done. And because of that, they've completely changed the pressure in the project team, the skills in the project team, and also the profit of the project team. So most project teams in MSP will be making no money. They'll be losing money, if anything. And the business will be looking at it from an angle of, this is a necessary evil, and we're really interested in the MRR. So we'll let the project team run at a loss or a break even because we want the MRR. When actually the best performing MSPs are making money out of their projects, but they're doing it because they cookie cutted. They built services with cookie cutting delivery off the back of that to then mean that we can skill the project team up to delivering that cookie cutter.
Can you give us an example of the sort of services that might lend themselves to that sort of that
Office 365. So this customer,
Yeah.
I was talking to his partner, I was talking to, they'd done it on Office 365 security. So they'd built 3 packages. One was securing your user, securing your device, and securing your infrastructure. You bought 1 or 3 of or 2 or 3 of those packages, but off the back of that package, you had a set scope of work, a set project, a set delivery of what securing a user meant inside Office 365.
Okay.
So your engineer
Scope defined.
knew exactly what tick boxes, what structure, how to deliver that, how to communicate that, how to flow that within that business. The customer thought they were getting something bespoke to them, but actually you just got 3 cookie cutter projects that you're delivering and rinse and repeating every time. You look at things like SLI data, they tell you that between 7 and 10 first times you deliver something, you'll make no money. So if we're not cookie cuttering it and we're doing a project every time bespoke, well, we're not going to make any money because we haven't done it enough times to define it and redefine it and 360 and structure, however you want to do it, to come back into the fact that you've got a delivery that you can make money out of because you're doing it different every time.
It's massive, isn't it? Standardization is absolutely key, isn't it?
Yeah. So in my previous MSP that I was there a long time, that's where we went with everything. Everything had to be standard and everything had to be run from data. The data didn't tell us to do it. It didn't matter who was knocking on our door, it wouldn't get purchased. And if we did purchase something, the CEO was very structured on what's the delivery, and you deliver 90% of that before we move on to anything else. And if it's not 90%, we either make it 90% or we get rid of the tool.
So you've got true product market fit and it has to be there.
Yeah, because they were very structured and that's the only way of delivering that consistency through the business.
Oh, we love a good standardization topic here at Sales Builder. Most project teams lose money because every delivery is that special snowflake. That Office 365 security example, 3 standard packages that feel bespoke but aren't. Pick your most common project type right now and create 3 delivery tiers. Document every step, every hour, every resource. This is how the best MSPs win. Price it properly and stick to scope. Stop reinventing the wheel for every single customer. That standardization is so important these days, and it's where all those lovely profits in the projects will actually come from. Darren, I can't leave without asking you about the future of, I'm going to say, AI and automation. In terms of your view on how much it impacts MSPs, when I look at it, I feel like every single business could benefit hugely from automation. And if they're not adopting something, then they're going to fall behind competitively. Do you see that? And do you see it as like being a real urgency for MSPs to be able to offer something in the automation area, or is it just hype? What are your thoughts on what you're seeing from the cold face, as it were?
Yeah, so I see AI as the new cloud. So cloud came out, Microsoft did an amazing job at marketing it, and then everybody started calling their product cloud. People that were doing POP3 email servers for years, now it's cloud.
Suddenly
it's not changed, it's just cloud.
It's just
so
moved.
The biggest problem you have now in our industry is everything's AI, when actually it's an automated workflow. There is no AI intelligence in the income and outgoing of that process.
It's the automation side that seems where the power is,
Yeah. So AI has definitely got a future.
Yeah.
It's got a small input in an MSP, I think, compared to where it can be. You know, I was talking to people in the industry and they talk about AI being a very immature baby at the minute, and it doesn't really give you the right answers, wrong answers all the time. So you've got to nurture it. And, you know, you wouldn't sit your 6-month-old baby in a driver's seat of a car and ask them to drive it, but when they're 18, you would. So it's at that small stage and it's going to grow, and it's definitely going to have an impact in our world.
No doubt, yeah.
But I think where we are today, the biggest impact is automation, and lots of that automation has been in all the tools that we've all been using for the last 15 years.
It's just suddenly an awakening.
Yeah, just nobody's been using them very well. And there has been development in that, but the basics have been there forever. So I think it's a bit like your POP3 world. Actually, some of it's been there forever and we just need to embrace it. But a lot of the automation can't be done unless you've got strict processes and structure in your business and you've got the right data. You know, even if you point AI at data, if the data isn't logical and straightforward, it's going to give you the wrong answers. So when people are using AI to sort of, let's say, look at the last 60 days worth of ticket data and give me an analysis, well, if the ticket data that's put in by your engineers is poor maturity, well, AI is going to give you the wrong answer. So I think the 2 key things for MSPs when we talk about AI and automation is go back to automation first, work out how you want to automate some bits in the business and what's the impact of that. And then at the same time, work on your data structure. So work on things like your service desk processes and your ticket analysis and your ticket inputs from engineers to make sure they are actually not just put in, it's now working.
Yes.
You know, if they put it's now working on 90% of the tickets for the next 5 years, well, in 5 years' time or 2 years' time or 1 year's time when AI gets there, you're going to have poor data that you're not going to be able to use.
That's absolutely key, isn't it? Well, it's no surprise really that a visit to Scalable leaves me thinking that your PSA cleansing and your data integrity is absolutely fundamental to the success of your business.
Yeah, and people. We mentioned it briefly.
And people.
I'm a big believer of people. The right people in the right seats will look after your customers, and that'll look after the business.
Brilliant. Darren, we've got a segment in our podcast, and you might like this one. We call it Industry Manure. So this is where you get to dispel a myth that you hear maybe it might be out in the industry, people you talk to, where there's advice given and you just think, no, that is not right. If someone listens to that, it's probably going to be detrimental to their company. Does one stand out for you?
I guess a really hard question, because I think there's lots of things that that stand out.
What grinds your gears the most, I would say?
I think the bit that really gets me is people talk about sales and marketing. In the peer groups for the last probably 10 years, the number one thing has been sales and marketing. And everyone talks about different theories in sales and marketing, different ways of doing it, different tools, different marketing methods, etc.
Okay.
But the crux of it is they do zero of it. So stop talking about which ones you should choose and just do something.
That's a great one.
Yeah. So typically when I go to an MSP and they say, well, we want to grow, we're not growing, we're stagnated. And you say, right, okay, how much sales and marketing, number one, time, and number two, investment in money are you putting into it? Typically it's next to zero. So if your son, daughter came home and said, my homework scores are really low, and you said, well, I'm not really seeing you do any homework. Well, I don't, but I need my score to be higher. Well, you tell them to do more homework. Yeah. So for me, like everyone is talking about sales and marketing, we just need to do something.
That's a brilliant one. And also, I suppose it's the consistency. And it's understandable, there's so much else going on in the world of an MSP, but it's the consistency, isn't it? Doing a bit and then stopping. And we see this a lot where it's, unless you see it through, we see it in our own businesses in the SaaS world. Same thing. If you're not doing a steady 12, 18 months of a program, you're not going to understand anything about how it's performing.
Yeah, and you need to do it longer than you think. Again, people bounce around different things because one of the problems is they come from a technical background. So in technical, a lot of the time when we implement a tool or we implement a process, we get instant reward.
That's it. Yeah.
And so when I'm a technical person, I implement a marketing tool or a marketing strategy, I want instant reward. So if after 3 months it isn't working, I move on to the next tool or the next strategy. When actually most marketing and sales strategies are 16 months, 2 years strategies before you even see any type of return. And people just don't give it long enough.
Now, you can't tell me you listened to that and that didn't resonate either with you or someone you know. It's just because it's true. MSPs spend so long debating which marketing strategy, and it's not even just MSPs, let's be honest, but ultimately then often end up doing nothing, which is no good. So you want instant results like server fixes, but marketing, unfortunately, takes much longer than that, 18 months minimum. Pick one thing, LinkedIn content, email campaigns, whatever. Commit to 12 months, track it properly, but don't just jump ship after the first 3 months. Consistency, I promise you, beats perfection every time. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for letting me come and visit you. I really appreciate it. Do you want to do we call it a yell from the barn. So let us know where we can maybe reach you and anything that's interesting going on in the Scalable world, and maybe just mention a little bit about what you guys do.
Yeah, so scalablemsp.co.uk, on my LinkedIn, Darren Strong. We're two sides to the business. We've got implementations and migrations of PSAs, and then we've got consultancy, which is the maturity of your MSP. And we're growing, we're trying to mature ourselves, we're on this journey just like MSPs, and we'd love to talk to anybody. We're quite open with everything we do, so we'll tell you exactly how we do our frameworks. When I'm on stage, people actually ask me, why do you tell everyone everything that's in your frameworks? That's just the way we do our sales and marketing. So have a conversation with me. You can take something away and deliver it yourself. Darren, thank you so much. Been an absolute pleasure chatting to you, and I'll catch up with you very soon. Thank you. Cheers. Well, what a great chat. I love listening to Darren, and honestly, that man has some serious depth of knowledge. So reach out to him if you've got any questions. And you've got some homework, haven't you? Audit a customer contract for revenue leaks. Map your team's real strengths. Calculate where your next 500K is going to come from. And then tailor the business reviews to each audience. What a great piece of advice that was. Standardize your most common projects too, and pick one marketing channel for 12 months, not just a 3-month thing. Darren's done this at scale. 7 million revenue, 20% EBITDA. That doesn't happen by accident. So while competitors are chasing trends, profitable MSPs focus on that operational discipline. Boring wins. Data wins.
Cheers. That is it for this episode of Harvest. If you found this useful, all the links we mentioned are in the show notes. And of course, if you enjoyed it, please do leave us a review and share it with a friend, or even better, someone else in the industry who you know would get value from it. Until next time, happy harvesting.